Without further ado, Lynn Dickerson is going to give us tips and tricks on how to start a successful small business in this economic climate.
Well, good evening. Are you all like depressed by now? I'm happy to tell you, if I can keep this thing on, my story is much more encouraging and optimistic, so you're going to be happy to hear that. I'm going to begin by telling you a little bit, sort of a summary of the first 30 years of my career, to sort of set the stage for how I became a hybrid performing arts center executive director and a frozen yogurt novel. I spent the first 29 years of my career in the newspaper business, where I was a publisher for most of that time and then a corporate executive with the McClatchy Company. And I had more success than I ever dreamed possible, quite honestly, for a poor kid from the piney woods of East Texas. All of my newspaper years were spent on the business side of things, never on the journalism side. Everything I know about journalism I learned through osmosis. But as a publisher and a corporate executive, I was responsible for the news part of the business too, but my expertise was always on the business side. Those are what I now think of as my big business years of my life. I worked for corporations, some of them family-owned, but most of them were big publicly traded corporations. And you know, there are pluses and minuses of that kind of life. The positives are that you have a lot of resources available to you, such as accounting departments and tax experts and corporate attorneys and human resource departments, very competent administrative assistants, and you have the respect and the power that goes along with being associated with a big and successful company. But there are also negatives, such as being under the Wall Street microscope all the time, worrying about quarterly earnings and stock prices, and of course, the bigger you are, the bigger your problems are. So I'm really grateful for my almost 30 years in the newspaper industry and the companies that I worked for who entrusted me with great responsibility and rewarded me handsomely for it. And I'll always be a fan of newspapers, and I'm pulling for them to survive and make it in this new ever-changing world we find ourselves in. But I also don't miss it one iota. I'm glad to be in this new phase of my career. I sort of think of this new phase of my career as my retirement career, which is sort of weird because I work 7 days a week, and I put in 60 to 70 hours a week at both of my new retirement jobs. So while I'm often exhausted and sleep deprived, I've never been more professionally fulfilled or happier in my career. In October of 2009, I joined the Gallo Center for the Arts as the Chief Executive Officer. And I believe I was chosen for that position because, number one, I knew and loved this community, and number two, I had good business skills, which was what this organization needed. And it's really proven to be a good fit. The team and I here at the Gallo Center have made enormous progress in closing a big deficit and getting the center on much stronger financial footing. I entered this job knowing nothing about the performing arts business, and I've learned a lot in the last 20 months. And I also took on the challenge of riding this ship during the worst economic times any of us have ever lived through. So taking on a business that relies on donations for approximately half of its operating budget during a brutal recession in a community with 20% unemployment isn't for the faint of heart. But we've made great strides, and we will finish this year in the black for the second year in a row, I'm happy to say. And that has really been possible because of several reasons. One, increased ticket sales to the events that we've presented and lowering our cost of doing business, and most importantly, the incredible generosity of some very wonderful patrons and supporters in our community. We're blessed to be in as good a shape as we are in these really economic tough times. So I'm going to spend the rest of my allotted time talking about what my husband Ron and I have learned in the year since we opened Oodles frozen yogurt. The world of owning our own small business has been a lot of things. It's been fun, it's been exhausting, and it's been educational, among other things. We made the decision to move back to Modesto from Sacramento because of a perfect storm in our lives. A storm made up of being in a radically declining industry after suffering a tragic personal loss and being almost incapacitated with overwhelming grief. Some of you may know that we lost our 18-year-old son Ryan in the summer of 2007, just 10 days after we moved to Sacramento. And there really are not enough words in the dictionary to describe the heartbreak and sorrow that we have experienced since that time. 2 years later, after that tragic event, when I left the newspaper business and shortly thereafter accepted the role at the Gallo Center, we knew we wanted to do something entrepreneurial, something that would give Ron meaningful work to do and help him keep his mind occupied while I worked my new career at the Gallo Center. We had noticed while we were living in Sacramento that self-serve frozen yogurt shops were the new in thing. They were popping up all over the place, and they appeared to be fairly successful. We literally went and ate at one every single day, and we thought, oh gosh, this seems like a good thing. So we did a little research, and we put together a loose business plan. At the time, we weren't aware that there were any of these frozen yogurt concept shops in Modesto. We've since found out that there was one. We just didn't know it existed at the time. And by the time we opened our shop, one had just opened a few weeks earlier, and since then, 2 more have opened. So it really is a popular thing right now. You know, it was a risky decision to open a new business in the teeth of the Great Recession in an area of the country with the highest unemployment rates and the highest foreclosure rates. But we had learned firsthand that there are far worse things in life to lose than money. So we were offering a product that, even though it's a small dollar transaction item, it is a luxury item. You can live your entire life without ever buying frozen yogurt. But we had spotted a trend, and we felt like we were on the front end of the craze, so we decided to take the plunge. We tried to do things right from the very beginning. We hired an architect, we hired a graphic designer, a decorator. We wanted everything about our new business to be first class, to have a franchise look without being a franchise. We knew we had to set our shop apart from the competitors by creating ambiance, a unique culture, good energy, and a place that would provide a sense of community. We probably spent 20 to 30% more than we absolutely had to in order to cover those spaces and accomplish those goals. We believe now that extra money was well spent and has paid off. Our friend and graphic designer, Marcia Herman, is the person who came up with the name of our store, Oodles, and that led to the concept of the design, which you will notice there's lots of circles and O's and the bright colors and the whimsical look that goes along with the whimsical name. We also established up front that providing exemplary customer service would be one of our trademarks, and we've tried really hard to establish a friendly atmosphere. We've tried to exceed our customers' expectations and to make sure our shop is always clean and that our product is of the highest quality. And I know that all sounds like corporate buzzwords, but we really do mean it. And when you're as small as we are, you can make it happen. So we were fortunate that we had personal cash reserves that we could use, because borrowing money from a bank was not an option, even though we had excellent credit. As most of you know, during this recession, the credit market has frozen up solidly. Banks are just not loaning money for small startup businesses. So we used our own money to start the company. And there were some advantages to opening in a recession. We were able to find contractors and subcontractors when a few years ago you couldn't even find them because they were so busy. The prices weren't over the top as they were during the more robust days, and they were available to work right away. We were also able to find excellent employees. For an old newspaper gal who made her living from classified ads, we never even had to run an ad, and we received dozens and dozens of resumes, and we were able to kind of pick the cream of the crop and find some really great high school and college kids to work for us on a part-time basis. And lastly, we figured, if we can survive in this economic climate, surely things can only get better as the economy gets better. Sorry, I hate this thing. So that's kind of what we did. And we made some mistakes along the way, and we ran into some challenges. Finding distributors was harder than I realized it would be. We first worked with this shyster guy who overcharged us and took advantage of us, and I'm happy to report that he is now out of business. Right, he deserves that. We had to work hard at finding suppliers of our toppings, and at times we paid too much for our cups and other supplies until we figured out what we were doing and we cultivated more resources. Finding the right staffing levels took some trial and error, and we probably spent a little too much money in the beginning by being overstaffed or not quite knowing what we were doing there, but we now have figured that out and know how to staff appropriately. The build out of our space took way too long. We had hoped to open in February. Our goal was to open on Ryan's birthday, just kind of a sentimental thing. His birthday is February 16th. We ended up opening on May 3rd. Our contractor took much longer to finish the project than we had hoped. And later, we watched the very same contractor totally rebuild a Taco Bell across the street from us in 30 days. That was a humbling lesson, and those who have the most dollars get the best and fastest service. We were treated like small potatoes, which we were. And quite honestly, that was sort of eye-opening for me, because I'd always worked in big jobs where I was a big shot and people treated me like I was important. And they don't treat us like we're important. Fourthly, we didn't navigate the city and county bureaucracy very effectively. Late into the construction project, the project was brought to a standstill because we were told by one governmental agency that we had to have a grease trap installed. Even though we wouldn't be selling anything fried, we weren't creating grease of any sort. So this grease trap fiasco ended up costing us 2 weeks of time and several $1,000s in extra cost. So then when the next agency came along to inspect the project, they asked us why on earth had we put in a grease trap? And we said, well, agency A said we had to have a grease trap. And they were like, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. So in hindsight, we really should have pushed back on that and taken that decision to a higher level rather than just complying and putting in a grease trap. And I sort of feel foolish about that now, but it was a hard lesson learned, and we'll know better next time. Fifth, I wish we had known more about negotiating our lease. Even though we had a great commercial real estate agent looking out for us, I think we're paying too much rent in our off-season. And if we had it to do over again in the economic climate we're in, I would have been more creative in structuring our rent so as to give us some breathing room in the winter months when our sales are low. But again, we didn't know what we were doing. We were also novices at buying equipment and supplies and things like that. So we ended up kind of paying off-the-shelf retail, full price for everything, rather than buying off of eBay or buying used equipment and furnishings. And when we open our second one, which we hope to do, we will know better and we'll get a lot more for our money. We also wasted some money on promotion and advertising. My degree happens to be in marketing, and in college I remember a professor saying to our class that half of all advertising is wasted, you just don't know which half. And so we have done a few things that in the rearview mirror weren't very smart and didn't pay off. But again, we learned from those mistakes, and they were hard lessons, but we learned. So from the very beginning, we have been committed to being there. Ron and I, but especially Ron, have worked almost 7 days a week since we opened Oodles. And we believe that it's important for us to be on the site as much as possible, especially during these early days when we're building our business and setting the tone and creating the culture and the environment. We have a terrific group of young people who work for us, but at the end of the day, it matters if the owners are there. No one loves it like we do. No one cares about it like we do, and we believe in order to be as successful as possible, we need to be there. We need to be there working hard, visiting with customers, listening to customers, solving problems daily. So in summary, it really has been a great experience, and we have been successful. We've worked incredibly hard. We've learned a lot. It's probably been more work than we expected it to be, but we're hard workers, so that's okay. We've been able to pay back much of the money that we've loaned ourselves to start the shop, and we even pay Ron a pittance of a salary now. We've made many new friends. Ron said to me recently, I have so many new friends since we opened Oodles. I don't know any of their names, but I have one. So we would do it all over again in a heartbeat, and we feel really blessed that we took the plunge, we took the risk. It has been the exact right thing for us at this point in our lives and in our personal situation. So thank you for listening to me.
All right, so Oodles, I don't know if you've been there, my waistline, actually it's really healthy for you if you put the fruit toppings on, and not all those candy bars they've got chopped up out there. But if you look at this beautiful event program, on about page 4, it says, "Will come to you." If you take this little coupon into Oodles, Ron will buy one, get one free for you. So, a little value for your free attendance tonight.